Welcome everyone. Today's seminar is titled A Hydrologist Guide to Open Science. Hopefully by the end of the seminar, you will have a picture of what open science is and what are the practical steps you might take. I'm an independent researcher based in the capital, Ankara, in Turkey. And I've been very much interested in open science. For the past 2 years. Maybe a bit about me first. I'm a civil engineer turned into a hydrologist with passion on flood forecasting, predictive uncertainty estimation, and catchment classification. And I've been involved in the Young Hydrologic Society and EGU and IHS in the past 3 years. So if there are early careers in the participants, in the audience, I strongly encourage you to join these initiatives. So let's start off with a bit of hydrology and why equal access to knowledge on hydrology for the hydrologists across the globe is important. You probably already have an idea about that. Of course, an inclusive and diverse community is what helps us to thrive in terms of both science and career professionally. And the innovation that we help to produce is, of course, important, and making this equal is really essential, especially when connecting the interfaces on science, practice, policy nexus in a world of hydrological extremes and with a global agenda which is very much focused on sustainability. So in the science community, I assume that you are all researchers. You probably know that the research process, the data you use, the data you produce, the employ, and the code software you write, and the publications, your outputs. In all of these, openness is very critical. And through this openness, we can have a positive impact on the society. And this openness often means reproducibility and collaboration, accessibility, and community-driven support, transferability, very important. And there are several aspects that I will be touching upon in the remaining of my presentation, but for now, I would like to get you a bit familiar about the ongoing initiatives in the wider science community, including the UN efforts. So maybe there's someone from Rwanda. Next year, there will be an open science conference led by the World Climate Research Program, WCRP, in Kigali. So if you're around, check it out. There is a website for it. And maybe you heard there's the recently accepted UNESCO recommendation on open science, and the World Meteorological Organization accepted a resolution for unified data policy. It's a resolution which is very key for the hydrology community as well. So this universe of open science, there are tools, there are resources, initiatives, some keywords probably you have heard of, but it's expanding at a very increasing rate. And there are many people, organizations committing to it. Just to emphasize again, the UNESCO recommendation in open science is a big milestone for the globe. This document is freely available. If you want to dig into the details of what open science means, what it entails, with no focus on hydrology, Please go ahead and picture on open science quite easily. What about hydrological sciences community? What are you doing? Well, the 2010s, probably, of course, the researchers, especially the early career realized the need on reproducibility, and many good things happened afterwards. And in 2020, there was this special issue by the Hydrological Sciences Journal, which is an IHS journal. I hope you are familiar with IHS. And this special issue looked at data, hydrological data. And more recently, this year, we had two key papers. One of them is by the editors of the Water Resources Research Journal by AGU, and they provide a nice discussion on the current status and the future steps for open science in the publishing landscape. And finally, this opinion paper by Christoph Kudenek, who is the Secretary General of IHS, discusses the open science from a governance perspective. And so I sincerely invite you to have a look at these papers. They are all open access. If you want to get a flavor of the discussions. Okay, so what's next? The hydrology community. We have this HydroShare initiative by the QASI, the consortium of universities for advancing hydrologic science. It's an initiative from USA. So they have this platform on a collaborative platform for sharing data and models for hydrologists. Please have a look at it. And they also have a special section on educational resources for hydrology and water resources. Here you can find the uploaded materials from the authors. So it's kind of a material library for teaching. And of course, with the emergence of COVID-19, there has been so much focus on online teaching in hydrology. The need has been expressed by researchers through blog posts or articles, and now there's a fresh special issue in the journals Frontiers and Environmental Science. There are very nice contributions with examples on online education coming from the globe. Education, in terms of education, open science is important too. Okay, so with all these developments happening at the backstage, if you are not following these in person, it can be overwhelming to know the progress happening, especially if you are not familiar with open science at all. So knowing this problem, we, as a group of early career hydrologists, we came together to discuss open science and produce a document that would guide the hydrologists who want to start with open science practices. So I would like to here highlight my co-authors on this paper, which was published early this year. Caitlin Hall, Sheila Saia, Andrea Pope, Stan Skomianski, Niels Drost, Tim van Emmerik, and Rolf Hood. So today, we will be looking at the Open Hydrology Principles that we present in this paper. There are 4 principles that I'll be discussing in detail. in the paper, as well as some actionable steps associated with each principle, along with some do's and tips for for adopting these principles. And finally, there's an appendix of the paper. We have some scenarios for which we think that will be helpful. Okay, so I will start with the first principle. We will then move to the second, third, and fourth. I hope you will keep your attention alive. Hopefully, there will be time for this discussion and questions. So the first principle on open research process and approach. This principle implies that you intentionally plan for, describe, and share your entire research approach and process. This means from the very start of your process, which is idea formulation, your basic motivation to do that research, up until the final outputs, your publications. Well, it's not just about that. This process also includes failed attempts and lessons learned. Sharing of these is very important for learning from our lessons and getting the wheel move across another patch more easily. If you want to adopt the first principle, you also need to explain and justify which data methods you use. If you can't do this in the main text, you can do it in the appendix, no worries. Furthermore, you need to provide a conceptual model or the workflow in order your readers to follow your approaches in the right order. Very important, you need to have a data management and research dissemination plan. This is critical to all scientific fields, I guess, but to hydrologists, it's even more important because we deal with the data coming from all different sources, types of data. So when we combine these different sources, data from different sources and different types of data, it becomes very important to manage this data. Okay, what else? In your publications, you need to also minimize the jargon you use. This is helpful for getting across to the non-hydrologists as well, especially beyond academia. Fair research, findable, accessible, interpretable, and reproducible. Follow the care principles. Okay. Support you on doing these. Jupyter Notebooks, GitHub, Google Drive, OpenLab, all these are collaboration tools that will make things easier for you throughout your research. And when it comes to sharing, of course, you can also have a look at the Open Science Foundation platform. Below, you see four resources. If you want to dig into the details, please refer to them. For now, I will move to the second principle, which necessitates documenting all components of your data collection and analysis pipeline. So for this principle, you must describe your hardware and software, including the versioning and the data collection processing. It's very important that you also highlight the assumptions you make, and everything is important, right? Use of technologies for storing your data. This could be raw data, metadata, or processed data. No matter what data you are storing for sharing purposes, pay attention to make it universal and open, which means using universal data formats like NetCDF. It's by far the most commonly preferred data format. And data management, again, the sources, the formats, how you store and share, the privacy and copyright issues. These are all very critical, and you need to make sure that you consider all the circumstances in your project for being as open as possible for your data collection and analysis. There are some tools that will help you to do these. So data management planning tool, the MPT, it's one of them. Likewise, CCAN, excuse my pronunciation. And in terms of reproducibility, when it comes to your data analysis, there is Renku and our open science platforms. You can benefit from the education and training offered by the carpentries. They have a wide scope of resources to help you, to guide you. For now, I will leave you with 4 more resources. If you want to dig into the details, you are very welcome to have a look at them. Okay, next is the 3rd principle, open code software development and use. What does it mean? It means you test, archive, document, and version control your research code and software. This means first using open source programming languages, R and Python, for example, as well as open repositories for your coding. GitHub, CRAN, for example, these are very much commonly used by hydrologists, at least I'm aware of. And version control systems. Again, Git offers that to you. And when it comes to documenting your workflow and, well, the workflow of how you use your software, which means which chunk of codes you run first, second, third, and how do you feed them into each other, etc. So please make sure that you provide inline comments for the readers when you share your code and software. And very critical also is to provide information on the versions and the operating systems that you use. What are the tools that can help you for making your research open in terms of code and software? Like just mentioned, R, Python, RStudio, Spider, these are integrated development environments. Very popular is now the use of computational notebooks. Both Jupyter and R offers this functionality. R Markdown you can prefer. For version controlling, again, you can use the Git functionalities. Software repositories, CRAN for R, and GitHub, and also Bitbucket, which I'm not so familiar with it. How to do data creation and replicable analysis. There are several platforms, resources. You can check them out. Data Carpentry and Happy R with Git are my 2 favorites. You will, of course, need some technical support, and Stack Overflow is ready to offer you that kind of support. And for documentation, read the docs might be helpful in documenting your your process as it relates to the codes and softwares that you produce. Just want to mention this recent paper called Hydrology Modeling R Packages. It's listed at the end of the slide. In this paper, you can find a list of currently available R packages that are available to the community. So it's a great way to start with when deciding which packages analysis for your analysis, your modeling. All right, moving on to the fourth principle. Time flies by. Open publishing. So far we had the first principle, the research process and approach. The second, it was what? Anyone remembering? Data collection and analysis. And third, code, software development and use. What about next? So together with my co-authors, we decided that the fourth principle could be open publishing, because it's kind of the principle which encompasses all the previous three principles, because it's the publication refers to your data, code, software, your methodology, everything. So hence, this part will be a bit more comprehensive compared to the previous principles. How to stick to the open publishing principle? Well, you need to publish your results in publicly accessible repositories like Zenodo, Figshare, very common, and or open access journals. Of course, there will be some exceptions which arise due to the privacy and safety matters, like national security reasons, because yeah, this usually happens with data sharing. But still, you can make sure that you justify why you can not share publicly your materials, okay? When it comes to publishing, it's good to know that there are three primary open access models in the publishing sector. The first one is gold, diamond, in other words. Sometimes it's also referred to as diamond, hybrid, and green. Green open access, you need to say it's the period of time that you can keep your publication, the final version or the accepted version unavailable, so to say. Alternatively, if you cannot publish in open access journals, you can of course always choose a non-open access journal, but instead you can benefit from the preprint service. There are a bunch of servers which you can have a look of it in ASAP Bio or R3 Data or Nature. They have a comprehensive list for you to decide on which one to pick. Earth Archive is, for example, one, and BioArchive, Deep AI, like there are so many of them. These preprint servers help you to get community input, and the most important advantage is that it allows you to share your output at any stage of the project. Well, regardless of which publication outlet you prefer, you have to make sure that you check the preprint policies, copyrights and licenses, and open access archiving policies that the journals, that the preprint services are offering. And well, the publication community, the publishers are very diverse. So it should be you to decide which options are the most suitable for your case. To do that, you can have a look at the Sherpa Romeo website. There is also this tool offered by Coalition S, Journal Checker tool, it's called. Also, Creative Commons and Open Source Initiative have information on such information. Well, I think one of the key messages that I want you to take from today's seminar is to remember that it's up to the reviewers to a great extent, maybe as equally as the editors of the journal, to promote. You are reviewing a paper, ask the question, is the data shared? Is there a statement on data sharing, or the codes, the packages, R packages used, are they properly cited? So you can, by doing so, you can increase the awareness and promote, advocate for better practices when it comes to open science. So we talked about the open publishing principle. So of course we cannot we have to mention the current status of hydrology journals. What are their current policies in terms of all these 4 principles, for example? So in the last EGU, General Assembly, European Geosciences Union General Assembly in May, we had a presentation looking at this, especially. So we had 5 criteria. First, open access model, publication finance policy. Third, the preprint policy, and release requirements for data, code, and software. And finally, the peer review procedure. So remembering that open publishing encompasses all the other principles, we thought that looking at the journals in detail would be very beneficial, especially for understanding or deciding how the hydrologic publishing landscape can evolve to foster open science. We had a list of journals. In total, there were 30 of them. Most of them, well, are internationally recognized journals, and some of them, of course, are published by hydrology professional societies. The table with the metadata, it's available in a Google spreadsheet. So you can always, well, I think I will have the chance to share my presentation afterwards with the participants. So the link will be clickable. So you can have a look at that table for deciding on your own publishing journey. So by extracting information from those journal repositories, we came up with this large table through spring. And now I will summarize the outcomes of this table. So in terms of open access model, we saw that there are less full open access journals than hybrid journals. The hybrid type is kind of the easy way for journals during this transition period in supporting open science. So hybrid means they offer both options, open access and non-open access. It depends on the author's on which type they want to publish. So I think it's fair to say that hybrid is the new black. And maybe it's a good time to say that there's this Plan S. It's an international initiative fostered by Coalition S, and they were launched in 2018, and we found that only one journal, which was hydrogeology, was included in this Plan S. Well, I think that's all that I would like to say for this part. If you are a part of a project, a research project that is funded by a national or international regional agency, it's usually these hybrid journals that they want you to publish. So to keep in mind, of course, when you choose to publish open access, there is a certain amount of fee, which is called article processing charge, APC. And this fee ranges quite a lot between the journals. And while there are fee waiver and discount options for authors from developing countries, the average fee is quite high for researchers. So that's an issue, especially if your university doesn't have an agreement that enables you to cover challenging times. However, there could be some solutions, which I will hopefully have the time to mention towards the end. So in terms of their different policies, hydrology journals, they are very friendly of preprints. They do accept, for example, it was only 5 journals that we found aren't accepting preprints. And by default, some journals like the Copernicus journals, they have their own preprint service. So then you don't get the chance to choose. It becomes mandatory. And what's good to keep in mind is that depending on the journal you are considering, the allowed preprint service repositories, it change. So please make sure that if you decide to publish a preprint, make sure that you check if the journal you are planning to submit your paper accepts the preprint published on that server, on that particular server. Again, there are tools to look at these. I think I mentioned them, so I'm not going to repeat. This is very important. If you want to adopt open science practices at this time, in these years, the responsibility of the authors is huge. And of course, advocating for open science practices when reviewing papers is one of those responsibilities. Okay, finally, no, not finally. These journals, data, code, and software sharing, we couldn't find a consistent policy across journals, even for data sharing. And although data sharing is expected by the journals, with some exceptions, of course, the encouragement of data sharing doesn't really always result in shared data and code. So the fact that there's encouragement by the journal, by the way, this is the wording of the journal, the outcome is not always that there's sharing. Although it's a common practice that most journals require data availability statement. However, when we look at the sharing of code and software, we couldn't see almost no mention in information that referred to code and software sharing. So maybe this is one of the aspects that the journals should focus on for the future. And as for the peer review procedure, like the Copernicus Journal has Hydrology and Earth System Sciences, we couldn't find any that has interactive public discussion during the review. Well, there is this forum in the frontier journals for collaborative peer review, but that is not open. And in terms of the type of peer review, most of the journals are single blind, and this means maybe not always, but it could be discouraging for open science. This is open to discussion, right? There are various opinions on that. So I think in short, it's fair to suggest the journals to add code and software and data to their peer review process. This is often not the case, usually. Yeah. So coming back to the paper, this HES paper, again, big thanks to my co-authors. This was a big team effort. Apart from the principles and practical guide, we also have a section which we provided in the appendix, which basically has 5 scenarios to facilitate direct practice in dealing with the common challenges. You probably are familiar with some of them. So, of course, it's always easy to say, yeah, support open science, apply the principles in your own research, in your own department, laboratory, but it's not easy, right? There are many aspects that hamper the practices. So these could be social cultural challenges or political, sometimes even economic, like we said for the article processing charge. However, be aware that every problem is there for us to tackle, right? It's without having any problem, we wouldn't be able to offer solutions. So don't be discouraged. Try to explore the alternative opportunities that could support you in your endeavor, and get help, ask for help. I mean, ask a colleague from another continent, or ask your project investigator, or ask the internet. I provided you with many platforms, resources, websites. Everyone having similar problems. I'm not going to go into the details of each challenges, but just want to know that in this appendix, we also developed 5 scenarios for several challenges, well, formulated into 5 scenarios, and each corresponds to a different career level and several of those challenges that you have seen in the previous slide. And I'm sure one of these scenarios you will find yourself in the shoes of this person in the scenario. Please have a look at them. Maybe the solutions offered might work in your case too. So we are very close to the end. Let's see what are the messages you can take after this seminar, how you can continue your journey, regardless of your career stage, regardless of your location or research topic. These are valid, should be easily adopted. Well, of course, open science is not a like one-step thing. It's a continuous process with sub-processes being linked to each other. So you will find yourself in that process very often coming across different issues, different solutions. So it's a very integrative world. And know that once you are in that loop, you are definitely making progress. And in cases of when you think you don't take big enough steps, no, it's always enough to take small steps. I mean, be proud of your small steps. And in case you have issues, please go and ask for help. And most importantly, be patient and persistent. Because open science is an ongoing initiative. It's an expanding universe, and there is no one single right direction. And the wider sciences community is, of course, moving in the right direction, but there is still a long way to go. Well, we presented in the paper, our HES paper, the 4 principles. We think that they are timeless, but probably the practical steps we offered will change in time. And it's important to note that every project, every research lab, every situation in itself can be very unique. So don't be discouraged when you can't find a solution or when you can't do something. Try to adopt the available solutions to your case. Okay, in this open science world, of course, there are some unaddressed aspects like the engagement of stakeholders, equity, and etc. However, since we are in the right direction, since we come across the problems, we will be able to have a look at those aspects that haven't been tackled yet. So, since publishing is kind of the most encompassing principle, I guess the most logical recommendation would be to have everyone in the publication pipeline doing their best to apply the open science standards. It doesn't matter if you are an author or a reviewer or editor. It's going to be a team effort. Okay, so how to move forward? We have a couple of suggestions for you. Please read the paper, the full paper. It's open access, of course. Maybe you already did. If it's the case, then thank you. If you haven't recommended this paper to your colleagues or your department's head, etc., please do so. It could be an interesting activity to apply those scenarios, to discuss those scenarios all together and come up with your own perspectives, your own solutions. Okay, we have this GitHub website where you can sign on as an open hydrologist. it's this platform also where you can find more resources to support your open science journey. We have a Twitter page, Twitter account. It's at open_hydrology. We try to stay active there. You can always join the discussion, promote open science. If you do this, then this means you are already a part of the open science community. Thanks for your attention. I wish every one of you best of luck for your open science journey. If you have questions, I would be happy to answer. I see that we have very little time left, but you can contact me via my email and Twitter. Thank you.